All right, let's dive into one of the most chaotic, contradictory, and just plain revolutionary periods in all of human history, the 20th century. I mean, think about it. It was a time of both unimaginable horror and absolutely breathtaking progress. Trying to understand it can feel, well, a little overwhelming. So today, let's see if we can find a pattern in all that chaos. On one hand, you have thinkers like the philosopher Isaiah Berlin, who flat out called it the most terrifying century in Western history. And, when you consider the sheer scale of the violence and the bloodshed, it's pretty hard to argue with him. But that's only half the picture, because for others, like the Nobel laureate Severo Ochoa, it was a century of mind-blowing progress in science. In just a few decades, we went from the Wright brothers' first flight to literally landing a man on the moon. We cracked the atom. We mapped the human genome. How can these two realities exist at the same time? So what's the deal? Was it a century of total catastrophe, or was it one of unbelievable progress? And the big question is, how on earth can it be both? This is the central puzzle we're going to try and solve today. Luckily for us, we've got a guide. The historian Eric Hobsbawm came up with a really powerful framework for making sense of all this. It's a lens that helps us see the pattern hidden inside all the noise and contradiction. Hobsbawm's big idea is something he called the short 20th century. He basically argues, forget the calendar. The real story of the 20th century didn't start neatly on January 1st, 1900. No, it exploded into being with World War I in 1914. And it came to an abrupt end with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. And that specific chunk of time, he says, has its own unique connected story. And he breaks the short century down like a dramatic three-act play. Act 1, he calls the Age of Catastrophe. Then you get a short but absolutely spectacular golden age. And finally, it all comes crashing down in what he calls the landslide. So let's start with Act 1, the Age of Catastrophe, running from 1914 to 1945. This is the period where the entire world of the 19th century, with its stable empires, its belief in liberal progress, its global economy, was just completely and utterly shattered. So what brought on this collapse? Well, it was a perfect storm. You had two total wars on a scale humanity had never even imagined. You had a total global economic collapse with the Great Depression. This pretty much destroyed faith in liberalism across Europe, and into that vacuum rushed two radical new ideologies fighting for control: fascism and communism. The result was just pure chaos. And the human cost, it's just staggering. Get this, by May of 1945, there were 40.5 million displaced people, refugees wandering across a ruined Europe. 40.5 million. It's a number so huge you can barely even wrap your head around the suffering it represents. The world was fundamentally remade. The globe of 1914, dominated by big European colonial empires and a gold standard economy, it was just gone. By 1945, a new reality had set in, a world of superpowers locked in ideological combat, all living under the shadow of the atomic bomb. But then, and this is where the story takes a wild turn, out of the ashes of that total catastrophe, something truly remarkable happened. This brings us to the second and third acts, the incredible boom of the Golden Age and the slow, painful decay of the landslide. Hobsbawm calls the period from about 1947 to 1973 the Golden Age, and for good reason. For the capitalist world, this was a time of explosive, unprecedented economic growth. It was fueled by rebuilding after the war and brand new global economic systems. And this boom drove massive social change, with nearly full employment and the creation of the modern welfare state. For a little while there, it really seemed like a new, stable, prosperous world was actually possible. But it didn't last. The boom eventually gave way to the landslide, which kicked off in the 1970s with things like the oil crisis. Economic growth just stalled out. Mass unemployment, which everyone thought was a thing of the past, came roaring back. And political stability started to fray, kicking off decades of uncertainty and one crisis after another. And the grand finale of the landslide? The sudden, shocking, and almost unthinkable collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Now, for Hobsbawm, this wasn't just the end of the Cold War. Nope. This was the event that brought the curtain down on the entire historical era that started way back in 1914. The short 20th century was officially over. Now, running alongside this whole three-act drama was another world-changing story, One of the biggest things to happen in this century was the complete dismantling of the great European colonial empires that had basically ruled the planet for hundreds of years. After 1945, the whole thing just unraveled fast. You have Syria and Lebanon gaining independence, then the big one, India and Pakistan in 47, Israel and Indonesia in 48, Ghana in 57, which was a huge moment for sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, in just a couple of decades, the entire political map of the world was redrawn. So, when all the dust settled in 1991, what kind of world were we living in? Hobsbawm points to a few huge legacies. First, the age of a European-dominated world was done. Finished. In its place, you get a truly interconnected global village. But at the same time, this new world saw a massive breakdown of old social bonds, things like family, community, and the rise of a really powerful, radical kind of individualism that is still shaping everything today. And that's really the power of this framework. It's more than just a timeline. It's a tool that helps us see the hidden story. It connects the dots between the world wars, the economic booms and busts, the clash of ideologies, and the social revolutions that made this century so extreme. So the short 20th century had its epic story, a story of catastrophe, a golden age, and then a final collapse. And it leaves us with one last big question. What's the story of our century going to be?